My name is Mahesh Poudyal. I am from Nepal. I work in Madagascar. And today I'm going to talk about REDD Plus and who is likely to bear the cost of conservation related to REDD Plus kind of projects. And this talk is based on the work a large group of people in Bangor University, where I'm based, and University of Antananarivo. And also, I have to tell you that this is based on very much our first data that has come through from our survey. So this is early results. And as you can see, the project includes a lot of institutions. We have 10 altogether. And this is the only presentation from our project, so I think I must go tell briefly about what the project is all about. Okay, thank you. So our ultimate aim in our project is to look at how global payment for ecosystem services, such as carbon and biodiversity, can be used to alleviate poverty at the local level. And thank you. And it is based in this corridor and Kanihenjamen in eastern rainforest in Madagascar. It is one of the largest patches of remaining rainforest in Madagascar. Next. And this corridor is obviously important for biodiversity, carbon. There are a lot of endemic flora and fauna there, hydrological system as well. And to add to that, of course, when we are talking about ecosystem service, people are key and very important. And in this area, livelihood is mainly based on slash and burn agriculture, what is locally called tavi. And poverty is very endemic there. The latest data I have is rural poverty in this area ranges from 79 to almost 89%. So very high level of poverty. Thank you. And this is the project complex. I don't want you to try too hard to go through it, but our work package 6, we are the ones looking at socioeconomic issues around this area, and I'm going to focus on a little bit of what we have done on that work package. And what we want to do is ultimately to estimate this magnitude and distribution of net welfare impact of different approaches to payment for ecosystem services, and we focus on this part. Just to give you some statistics about the area, CAS protected area covers 371,000 hectares. There are 25 communes around this protected area, roughly 65,000 population, and there is already an ongoing REDD Plus pilot. And what we want to do, and what I am going to talk about in this presentation, is that social and environmental safeguard that was conducted as part of that REDD Plus project. And it is important to look at REDD Plus linking with poverty and livelihood, mainly because the whole livelihood system there is based on this clearance of forest slash and burn agriculture, and most of the people's economic activities is based around this. And as part of these environmental and social safeguards, there was a plan that was published in 2012 that kind of set out how the assessment was carried out in the area. And basically there were 3 criteria to identify what is called persons affected by project, PAPs, in this area. So one was those living around this protected area. Another criteria was that they use the resource, so forest primarily. And another criteria was those who use resource from the core of the protected area. So the resource could be wild fruits, honey, bushmeat, any kind of extractive provision service from ecosystem. And the actual assessment for safeguards was done in 2010, March to May. And the assessment was done in 114 Fuktani. Fuktani is the lowest administrative unit in Madagascar. And they covered 463 villages. And almost 12,000 households, actually little more than 12,000 households were surveyed. And the survey process went, so it started with public consultations of these villages, and then they identified the household and they surveyed the household. And to find out basically the person affected by project PAPs. And they initially, the 2,500 households were identified. So when we talk about person, it basically is household in this case. Households identified as those affected from the protected area. And around 1,800 households are being compensated. A lot of them have already received some compensation. And the compensation has been in the kind of form of micro projects at the household level. So these are poultry, beekeeping, technical rice farming. So trying to convert them from hill rice to paddies, give them training. And also part of it now recently has been beans, similar technical assistant in beans. And also tubers, so cassava, yam, and so on. And our interest is basically in how the identification process was carried out when they were doing the this PAPS identification in this area. And it has two kind of levels. One is the identification of Fuktani, so the lowest administrative unit and villages, and the other is identification of household, which I will going to focus here based on survey we did in one of the safeguard sites. So our main question is, what are the characteristics of households identified as PAPs? And are they any different to households that are not identified as PAPs? And this is based on early results from one of the sites, which you can see. So this is kind of southwest corner of the protected area. And these small stars show our study villages. And as you can see, this Fuktani boundary overlaps with the protected area boundary, and there are actually villages technically inside the protected area as well. And this is the recent kind of Google map kind of clip that I got. So all these dark patches are the recent clearance of forest. So there is still a lot of deforestation going on in this area. And during 2005 to 10, that was the period just before the safeguard assessment, deforestation was already very high. And in this Fuktani, there are 77 households who were identified as PAP. This is one of the largest Fuktani in Madagascar that I have been to and I know of. It's roughly 425 square kilometers. And it's very difficult terrain, hilly area. So good sampling frame, to get good sampling frame of the households is very difficult, but also important because household live scattered. So to get the representative sample, you do need to do a lot of work. And especially because there are not a lot of data existing. So there is a lot of challenge from data point of view, from access point of view, and so on. A lot of these households are recent migrants from other parts, clearing forests and settling in. And a lot of them are undocumented, so these are so-called unofficial households. But we wanted to capture those as well. So basically, we had to spend almost a third of our time trying to map out these households. So the process started at the Fuktani level, mapping and talking to the key informants, going down to the village level, then to the hamlet, and doing the same process repeatedly again and again so that we have a good map of households. So we used local participatory mapping to produce maps like this. So we could identify all the households that are scattered over the landscape. Right. So altogether, we mapped 468 households in this area where the social survey safeguards assessment was done. And I have to mention that in the safeguard assessment, they only identified 168 households. So there is a big gap between household we identified and the household that was considered for the safeguards. And out of those 468, we surveyed 203 households. These are stratified by village and then randomly sampled. Out of these randomly sampled households, 40 were PAP households that we found in our survey. And when we are doing our survey, a lot of the households were already getting the projects. So July, August this year, they got projects such as beans, farming, technical help with the beans, and some were getting poultry and also training on beekeeping and so on. Oh. Yeah, thank you. So basically, when we are trying to compare PAP and non-PAP household, we had some expectation about who might be PAP. And our key expectation were the PAPs would be those who own more tavi land, so more slash and burn agricultural land, more dependent on wild harvested product, and more recently established, because to get established, you have to clear the forest, and you are more likely to be dependent economically at this early stage and live further from the Fuktani center. So it's sort of proxy of identifying who is living closer to the protected area, closer to the forest. But we also included variables such as education of household head, livestock holding, food security, membership in COBA. COBA is this community-based management group there who are given kind of patch of forest to manage, synonymous to community forestry. And we wanted to check whether any of these other factors such as wealth and social and political capital and these have impact on whether they are more likely to be selected as PAP or not. And we just used the data to do very simple GLM binomial regression to predict which of these variables kind of help us identify whether a certain household is a PAP or not. Okay, thank you. So what you see in this coefficient graph is basically all the factors that we considered in the model listed. And in terms, when you look at this axis, and all the positive value kind of points along here indicate that these factors are more likely to influence whether the household is a PAP or not. And what we found was basically, so household who has decision-making member in these community-based organizations or even a general member were very much likely to be identified as PAP safeguards in this area. And household with higher, greater food security was also more likely to be PAP than those with less. And in terms of household age, how long the household was established, the longer you are established, you are more likely to be included in the safeguard household. On the other hand, some of these variables which we thought would be, important, we didn't really find them significant. And there are some key kind of expectation and what we found, differences between our expectation and what we found from the survey. So basically, those who live closer to the Fuktani center were more likely to be identified as PAP, probably because they get information, they are more likely to be present during this public consultation and so on. But also, if they are COBA members, usually they have some influence in the way decision is being made in the village, especially with regards to conservation and so on. And I think there is one last slide. Thank you. Okay, so basically what we found is there is some evidence of this local level elite capture in identification of PAP. And particularly this is based around this COBA membership. And of course, the poorest households are usually more dependent on forest, so they are more likely to suffer from restriction in land use. But of course, what we found was they are not the one who are being identified. And a lot of it, like I said, the identification was done based on this rapid assessment consultation, and a lot of it was self-identification. So people would tell whether they use forest or not. Of course, a lot of it is bordering on illegality. So self-identification may not work in identifying genuine PAP in many cases. And thank you for your attention. And these are next steps in our project that we would like to do. Basically, follow up on this early findings, use qualitative assessment that we have done to feed into these results, and also we have some more surveys ongoing. We want to find out basically opportunity cost of land use in conservation, the area around CAS, and kind of feed into the policy and basically REDD plus debate in this area. Thank you, and thank you to our collaborators and people who have helped us with the data.